This week, Sci-Fi Buzz meets the actor behind the new Conan series, Rolf Mueller. Legendary author Ray Bradbury and his degree from the library. An old-fashioned thriller with a supernatural theme, the new movie, Fallen. And the star of the Hellraiser movies, Doug Bradley, is also a scholar of horror.
I'm no apologist for horror movies or the genre at all. They're there, and they're important, and we need them.
Prepare. Stand by. The Buzz.
Movies. Personalities.
Sci-Fi.
FX. Behind the scenes.
Cutting edge. Get ready.
Sci-Fi Buzz. Mike Jarek here with the Buzz from the kingdoms of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Well, I was just sitting here thinking about the high-priced movies that I went to see at the end of 1997. Now, I found out that George Lucas's fourth Star Wars film was only budgeted at $60 million. Think of the Titanic, it was like $200 million. And the original Star Wars movie only took 12 less days to make than the fourth movie that he's making. But listen to this. It's going to take 3 times as long in post-production, all the new special effects of the 90s. It's kind of odd, too, that I'm getting so excited about this fourth Star Wars film when I don't know what it's about, and it won't be out for a year and a half. A sci-fi comic classic heads for the big screen, and a space opera starts its last season on this week's Buzz News.
Wow, this is really big league stuff.
The long-awaited feature film version of Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has taken a big step forward. Hollywood Pictures has just bought the rights to the hit novel, already a successful computer game and British TV show. The Hitchhiker's Guide follows the misadventures of Earthling Arthur Dent and his intergalactic hitchhiking buddy, Ford Prefect. Jay Roach, best known for helming the Mike Myers hit Austin Powers, is attached to direct and to co-write the script with Adams. The studio is already touting Hitchhiker as one of its big event pictures for the summer of the year 2000.
What Babylon 5 is a 5-year storyline. It has a beginning, and it has a middle, and it has an end.
Babylon 5 creator J. Michael Straczynski is one of the few producers in town hoping his series won't be renewed for another season. The story arc for the space epic ends after 5 seasons, and that last season begins this month on TNT. So Straczynski is currently working on a Babylon 5 spin-off series and hopes the new show will satisfy the B5 cravings of his devoted fans. And that's the latest Buzz.
I'm going to enjoy that sword, Conan! Wait till you visit! Slay out women!
Hoping to cash in on the financial bonanza being reaped by fantasy TV series like Hercules and Xena, Conan hit the airwaves last fall. The show sets itself apart from the competition by starring a bona fide muscle man, which television hasn't seen since Lou Ferrigno. German bodybuilder Rolf Mueller, a former Mr. Universe, portrays Conan.
Conan, Rolf Mueller himself, brings beef back to television. Conan is physical, bigger, and also able, when he fights 8 or 10 people, it's more believable that he wins.
Conan.
Samira.
Oh, God, how I have missed you.
Mueller is often compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who played Conan in movies. Both actors have Germanic backgrounds and both competed as world champion bodybuilders. As it turns out, Ralph has long idolized Arnold, and the two have been friends for years. But reports that Arnold personally handpicked Ralph to play Conan are inaccurate.
Here we have a show that cost around $20 million. And no one of the producers would take me because I'm only friend with Arnold. Otherwise, we would have only sisters and brothers in a movie business.
Indeed, Mueller has landed his own TV series because he possesses an iron will like the character he plays. After rising to the top of the bodybuilding world, Mueller decided to pursue movie stardom. He flew from Germany to Hollywood and tracked down a producer of action films, insisting that the man meet with him.
When we met, he said, "What do you want?" I want to be a movie star. But I said, "Don't laugh. My English is terrible. What I can present is a body, could be in action movies, and you would surround me with good actors."
After several supporting roles in films, Mueller got his big break with the Conan series. He prepared for the role like he was going to the Olympics, beginning with sword fighting lessons from the same expert who trained Schwarzenegger for the Conan movies.
I worked with him most, I would say, 3-4 days a week for 3 hours. Then I started with horseback riding. Then I went back to my acting coach, so my whole day was really busy. And I run with a 40-pound vest, the hills up and down, because I knew when I go in this kind of humidity, like I have in Mexico, I have to be in condition to survive.
The series shoots in brutally hot Puerto Vallarta. But for Mueller, the biggest challenge of making Conan is speaking English. He's tackled the problem by working 3 hours a day with a dialogue coach. This comes on top of his daily 3-hour physical workout to stay beefed up for the role. Mueller may not yet be ready for an Emmy, but he definitely deserves the award for hardest working man on TV.
You have to believe in yourself, and you can move big hills from one side to the other. So, believe in yourself, everything is possible.
The supernatural thriller Fallen, starring Denzel Washington, moves into theaters.
There are angels. Some of these angels were cast down, and a few of the fallen were punished by being deprived of form.
Come on, get out of here.
And author Ray Bradbury, a graduate of the library. Next. You've got mail. Actually, John has the mail from all around America.
Yeah, actually, Angela from Houston wonders if in...
Angelica Houston?
No, not Angela from Houston.
Oh, I gotcha.
She wonders that if in Highlander there can be only one immortal, what are Connor and Duncan MacLeod going to do when they're the only 2 immortals left?
Having one great last episode, wouldn't it? I don't know. Why do they write me about these giant plot holes? I don't know. Give me another one.
Check this one. Jerry in Providence wonders what your theory is on who killed the boat crew in The Lost World.
Let's go to the third one.
Okay, the third one, okay. Jackson in Eugene, Oregon says, what director could you recommend that could do a better job on a new Batman 5 movie than Joel Schumacher?
Ooh, I got it. Ed Wood.
He's dead.
Exactly. Science fiction author Ray Bradbury's story is one of self-made success. His riveting tales of futuristic doom have enlightened readers around the world. Yet it's all from the mind of a man who never took to organized academia. In fact, he barely made it through high school. You see, this literary legend has been a child of the library since he was 8 years old.
When I was 28, I graduated from the library. I had more knowledge in me than the average college student. And I told this at a lecture in Ventura a couple of years ago, and the president of the college was there, and during the intermission, he went out and got a cap and gown and a diploma and graduated me from the library, which was just gorgeous.
Bradbury is surely thrilled as books now line the shelves he once held so dear.
The great thing is I'm not there. I'm always out on loan. I've never found one of my books at the library, and then I go through the file, of course, and they have several dozen.
Back in the early 50s, Bradbury was still a struggling short story writer with little money for luxuries like a typewriter. So he rented one at his beloved library and gave long-form writing a shot. 9 days and $9.80 later, Bradbury had churned out his first novel, Fahrenheit 451.
Well, I grew up learning about the libraries in Alexandria 2,000 years ago, burning on 3 occasions, as I recall. So when you hear that, when you're a kid, it's terrible, especially if you're in love with libraries.
Fahrenheit 451 is the horrifying tale of a future Earth civilization where all printed reading material is banned. Bradbury did not work on Francois Truffaut's 1967 film adaptation of the book. He'll admit he was pleased with various aspects of the film, especially the dramatic ending set in the wilderness. But deep down, he believes the movie was an incomplete representation of his story.
They left out the mechanical hound, which is delicious fun, huh? You don't have to show it. Just let us know that it's there, huh? See it in the shadows. See its eyes glowing at you, huh?
Not one to dawdle, Bradbury has finished a screenplay of Fahrenheit 451 for a remake planned by Warner Brothers. There's a tinge of irony in the fact that he's actually enthused about working in Hollywood, considering his early disdain for the town.
I put it off for years because I knew it would be a danger. See, writing screenplays, you never learn how to write. So I didn't do any film work until I was in my 30s, and Universal came along and offered me an idea called the Meteor, which turned into it came from outer space.
Captain Ahab, was it not Moby Dick took off thy leg? Moby Dick.
Then the next year I was offered Moby Dick and did that. But then after that I called the hall. I said, I've got to take 3 or 4 years off. I went back to writing novels and short stories. And you see, you keep yourself from becoming vulnerable. All the screenwriters I know are vulnerable. If the studios close down, there's nowhere for them to go.
At 77, Ray Bradbury could slow down and savor the memories of a long and prosperous career. But he still spends his days tapping out tales in the basement of his Los Angeles home, keeping millions of faithful fans very happy indeed.
It's my imagination. It's the metaphors, you see. People see that I've had grand fun doing all this. It's not mechanical. I haven't looked at the marketplace. So they know I'm dredging all this stuff out of my head. And that's irresistible.
This is Roy Dobbs from San Diego. I'd like to recommend Tales from the Crypt, the official archives. It's a new coffee table book that covers the history of Tales from the Crypt, from the 1950 comic series through the movies to today's HBO comic horror series. The book has lots of photographs and comic strips covers. In fact, inside it has a whole series of all Tales from the Crypt covers. It's an excellent coffee table book that any Tales from the Crypt fan would love to have.
Puncture wounds. Look for a syringe or something. 18. What is that? Is 18th victim?
In the supernatural thriller Fallen, Denzel Washington and John Goodman play homicide detectives tracking a serial killer. Their investigation soon leads to some unworldly conclusions.
It's different from a typical police story because it involves the essence of pure evil. And without giving away too much of the plot, it manifests itself in very different ways and seeks out to destroy the purest man in the film, the cop with a heart of gold, who was John Hobbs, Denzel Washington.
And then one of the books your father had up there talks about demons and how they move by touch. I mean, what is that?
The evil in Fallen can physically take over a human body and be passed from one person to another.
Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is.
It's so simple. It's subtle. You know, and it was dangerous going down that road to just have it rely on touch. It could easily just not work. I think it's better to do it that way than to rely on some odd, weird, you know, pyrotechnics and, you know, whistles and whirligags or whatever.
While elaborate computer-generated effects may be the mainstay of the 90s, Fallen relies on a more simplistic approach to showcase its supernatural elements.
There's a device we call demon vision where you can see things are slightly askew when you know he's around. It's a process, a film process. It starts just a little bit off and it builds and builds and builds, but it's the world through the demon's eyes.
Beware my wrath.
I've always felt, and I still feel, the more things you can do in that camera, real time while you're shooting it, the truer it will be. If it became suddenly this digital world, which was all full of bells and whistles, then you would be taken out of it.
Special effects weren't needed to put the scare in some of Fallen's cast. Actress Embeth Davidtz says that the movie's supernatural theme often left her feeling a bit uneasy.
I just tried to not get too spooked myself while I was making it. If you stop and think about the subject matter of the scene where I'm being chased down the road, that's unnerving. And doing it again and again, it's a creepy thing knowing any minute somebody's going to ram you up against a wall and maybe change your life forever, you know?
But what do these veterans of cinematic evil believe in real life? Could there really be some sort of evil source circulating and waiting to take over the human soul?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I don't think it moves by touch or sings Rolling Stone songs necessarily, but I think that within us, there's that potential. Obviously, in our world, there's that potential.
Within the framework of human behavior, you've got it all. And to think that you don't is silly. The laws that we lead, the good that is essentially in people is going to keep at bay those forces in people that would like to break those rules and to create havoc and to hurt people. So let's just not kid ourselves that it's all there.
From Hellraiser star to horror historian, Doug Bradley is next on The Buzz.
You opened it. We came.
As any Fright fan can tell you, Pinhead is the diabolical star of the Hellraiser films and one of the most memorable characters in modern horror cinema. But what you may not know is that the man behind the pins, soft-spoken English actor Doug Bradley, is also a film historian and author. His new book, Sacred Monsters Behind the Mask of the Horror Actor, has just been published in Europe with an American release soon to follow.
My book, Sacred Monsters, actually grew out of an illustrated lecture that I wrote for college and university audiences, but also from relating to the fans and so forth at conventions and in fan mail, this constant fascination with the makeup and how the makeup worked and how I related to it as an actor. While I was writing the lecture, I kept finding I had too much material, and I had to keep cutting it back to keep it 1 hour long. People would come up and say, well, that's great, you know, have you thought of expanding it into a book? Because it'd make a great book. So I figured I'd better listen to them.
Naturally, Bradley's book covers the work of the classic horror stars such as Lon Chaney Sr. and Boris Karloff. But he also gives equal time to modern-day movie monsters like Leatherface and Freddy Krueger.
What I really wanted to do was two things, was to take the case of Chaney Sr., was to tell something of his story as an actor, and then talk about how he created the makeups and his relationship to the makeup. That's really the theme of the book, is the actor's relationship to the makeups.
And it's you.
Nonsense.
Doug Bradley understands well the relationship between actor and horror makeup. He still vividly recalls the very first time he was transformed into his pin-headed alter ego.
I spent a crucial half an hour. I asked everybody else to go away and leave me alone in the makeup room, and I sat in front of the mirror, completely tripped out by what I'm seeing. At the end of a 6-hour-plus makeup session, which has left me kind of gone anyway, I'm in a kind of trance with this whole thing anyway, and I just sat and looked in the mirror to get to know who this person was and start to dare to move an eyebrow and move a mouth and play a couple of lines.
We'll tear your soul apart.
It's obvious by his on-screen performance that this sort of deep introspection led Doug Bradley right to the black heart of his Pinhead character. But he admits playing the notorious demon isn't all hard work.
On a less high-blown level, there's an element of kids in the sandpit about this. You get this makeup on, you put these costumes on, you go out onto these extraordinary sets with this fun stuff to do, and it really is. This is fun. This is a good way to earn a living. Let's go and play.
Time to play.
And Doug Bradley firmly believes that the quality monster movies of today will one day be as highly regarded as Frankenstein and Dracula.
I think the perception will be that the last 25 years has been a second golden age in the genre. It's a genre that's never gone away. And for me, it's an important genre. These are mythological movies. I'm no apologist for horror movies or the genre at all. They're there, and they're important, and we need them, and we shouldn't try and sit on them.